I've never been one to ask too many questions when shipping pays well. Anyone who lives on the road knows that sometimes it's better not to know what's behind the cabin. But that specific charge, that one has stayed with me to this day. It was in 2015, in the interior of New Mexico. A man in a suit, who only introduced himself as Mr. Davis, hired me directly, in cash, to take a sealed container from an isolated facility to an industrial warehouse near El Paso. The strangest thing was that, before I even signed the paper, he gave me a list of instructions. No unnecessary stops. No opening the cargo door. No looking through the cracks. It's not your concern, he said. And he added, if you hear anything, keep driving. I should have refused. It should. But the money was very good, and I was swamped with debt at the time. I got in the truck and started the trip with the sky starting to get dark. The container was chained inside, well reinforced, heavy. And it had a strange smell. It wasn't rotten, but there was something metallic in the air. Like old blood mixed with rust. I tried to ignore it and move on. For the first 2 hours, everything went well. Total silence, just the roar of the engine and the sound of the road. But around the 3rd hour, I started hearing knocks. Weak. Rhythmic. As if something, or someone, was trying to move inside. I stopped on the side of the road, heart racing, and went to the back. I didn't open it, of course. But I stood there, listening. The knocking stopped immediately. I waited a little longer, nothing. I got back into the truck with sweaty hands and continued my journey. But from then on, the feeling was that I was no longer alone. The truck was different. The steering felt heavier, as if the weight of the load had shifted. I started to hear metallic scraping sounds, like chains being pulled on the floor. And a lower, constant sound, as if it were a very deep breath coming from the bottom of the body. I don't know how to explain what I felt, but it was as if something inside was listening to me. Not just moving, listening. It seemed to follow every curve, every break. At one point, I thought I heard a voice, muffled, slurred, saying something I didn't understand. My head started to hurt. I turned on the radio, tried to distract myself, but it didn't help. The presence back there was so strong that it seemed to press the air inside the cabin. The temperature rose, the metallic smell became more intense. And suddenly, the headlights started to fail. The headlights flickered as if something was draining the truck's power. I turned on the high and low beams several times, but nothing stabilized. I started to think I was going to be left in the dark in the middle of the desert. That's when I saw, in the side mirror, what looked like a shadow moving inside the bodywork, something large, with an undefined shape, pressing against the metal walls as if it was trying to get out. But the container was locked from the outside. And still, you could see the walls deforming, vibrating. At the time I panicked, I hit the gas. I just wanted to get to my destination quickly and finish that damn job. With about 50 kilometers to go to El Paso, I received a call. Unknown number. I answered tremblingly. It was this Mr. Davis. His voice was calm, almost gentle. He just said, "We know you heard. Keep going. Don't stop. Don't talk to anyone." And hung up. There wasn't even time to respond. That destroyed me inside. How did he know? How did he know I had heard something? That's when I realized that, in some way, they were monitoring me. It wasn't just the load that mattered. It was the route. The route. The time. Everything timed. As if there was something with a deadline to happen. Or to be contained. I arrived at the warehouse around 3 in the morning. It was a remote place, with no signage, just a rusty iron gate and two men in black waiting outside. They didn't say a word. One of them pointed to where I should park. As soon as I turned off the engine, they opened the back with a huge key they took out of a briefcase. I stayed in the truck, watching in the mirror. They opened it calmly, as if they knew exactly what was there. And for a good 5 minutes, nothing happened. Until one of them looked straight at me, waved his hand and told me to go away. Fast. I didn't wait for a second order. I started the truck and drove away with my heart in my throat. I didn't look back. The following week, I tried to find the warehouse again, but found nothing. No street, no address, no coordinates. It was as if it had never existed. I only told this story once to a trusted friend, and he told me to forget it. There are things that are not meant to be understood, he said. And he was right. I don't know what I loaded into that truck. All I know is that, to this day, I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of chains dragging. And a metallic smell that doesn't leave your nose. After that delivery, I tried to carry on with my life normally, but something changed. It wasn't just the trauma, it was physical. My electronics started failing around me. My watch stopped. My cell phone was dead in minutes, and the truck's GPS was stuck on routes that didn't even exist. I even went to a doctor after feeling a constant ringing in my ears, as if there was a low frequency playing all the time. He said it could be stress. But I knew it wasn't just that. That stuck with me. As if a part of what I carried had stuck to me. Or chose me. A month later, I met another truck driver in Arizona who said he had made a similar delivery. Same type of payment, same type of instructions. He didn't want to say much, but when I mentioned the metallic smell and the current sounds, he blanched. I just said, never accept shipping again without knowing what you're taking. And he left. This confirmed for me that this was recurring. A pattern. A transport cycle of, whatever it is. And there are more people involved. More trucks. More routes. As if we were carrying parts of something much bigger. Nowadays, I only accept open load. And even so, I look at everything with suspicion. The value doesn't matter. No matter the urgency. Nothing is worth more than my sanity. But sometimes, parked at a gas station or sleeping in a passenger seat, I still hear the sound. A light, metallic noise, as if something was scraping the floor of the body. When I look, there's nothing. Just emptiness. But I know what I hear. And I know that if I hear that again, it's because something that should have been locked away is still out there. Maybe in another truck. Maybe in another warehouse. I just hope that the next person to do this transport has the same luck as I did. Because I still don't know if I got out of that trip in one piece. But for now, I'm still here, trying to forget. Trying not to remember what it felt like to breathe inside the metal. Trying to ignore the feeling that, at any moment, I'm going to come across that load again, but next time, open. It's been about 5 years since this happened to me, and I still don't know how to tell you without sounding crazy. I've heard of similar stories, especially on truck drivers' forums, stories of appearances on the road, figures, people disappearing in the rear-view mirror. But it's one thing to hear it from another guy. Another, completely different, is to live it. The road that runs through the Flagstaff region of Arizona has always been a little weird at night. It has a poorly lit section of mountains, with sharp curves and a narrow shoulder. That's exactly where they say strange things happen. And it was exactly there that I met that truck driver. At the time, I was driving at night, returning empty after a delivery in Phoenix. It was around 2 a.m. Cold, light fog, and an eerie silence. There was no one on the highway, which was unusual. That's when I saw truck lights flashing on the side of the road, emergency lights on. An old model, one of those Peterbilts from the 80s, all red and with chrome details. A man was standing next to the booth, giving a thumbs up. I stopped on instinct. On the road, we help when we see one of our own in trouble. He approached my window with a calm smile, as if he already knew me. He spoke in a calm, somewhat hoarse voice, saying that he had an electrical problem and that he needed some strength to connect the battery with a cable. I said I didn't have a cable because my truck was new and I hardly needed it, and he just laughed and said, "It's okay, brother, just stopping is worth it." I stayed there exchanging ideas with him for about 5 minutes. We talked about the road, the cold of that region, the loneliness that strikes at those times. And then he thanked me, patted the side of the door twice and told me to continue my journey carefully. Turn 5 is treacherous. That got me, because only those who know the stretch well call the curve that. Turn 5 is famous by accident. I played trip, a little thoughtfully. When I looked in the rearview mirror, his truck wasn't there anymore. No lights, no signal. I braked, reversed about 200 meters to the exact point, and there was absolutely nothing. Not even a tire mark on the shoulder. It was as if there had never been anyone there. I stood there for a few minutes trying to understand. I took out my cell phone and started searching for anything about sightings in that area. And that's when I found, on an old truck driver's forum, if a red Peterbilt stops you in the Flagstaff Mountains and the driver warns you about turn 5, say thank you and move on. His name was Hank. He died there in 1998. That stopped me. The name, the model of the truck, the warning about the curve, everything matched what the guy on the forum wrote. I read the post again more calmly. It was from 2009, written by a truck driver called Redog77. He said that, in the 90s, a driver named Hank lost control of his truck exactly at turn 5 during a blizzard. The truck fell down the bank and exploded. They said his body was never recovered in one piece, but that the red hood with chrome details was stuck in the trees, visible from the track until a few years ago. After that, reports began to emerge, drivers who saw the Peterbilt stopped, who spoke to Hank, but could never prove it. I was obsessed for days. I stopped driving at night for a while. I started asking at gas stations if anyone had ever heard of the Curve 5 truck driver. Most people laughed and said it was an old legend. But 2 or 3 older guys got serious. One of them, in particular, told me, if he talked to you, it's because you were on edge. That froze me. Because, thinking about it, that night, I was really tired, almost dozing off at the wheel. And turn 5 came right after. If I had gone straight without stopping, it could have been the end of the line for me. Maybe he stopped me for that. Since then, whenever I pass that stretch, I slow down. I look to the side of the road, half expecting to see that red Peterbilt again. But I never saw it again. I've heard other similar reports, with small differences. Sometimes he appears walking in the middle of the road, sometimes leaning against another truck. But the warning is always the same: watch out for turn 5. And whenever someone tries to take a photo, the device freezes or the image is distorted. One guy said he took a video of it, but when he went to watch it, there was only the sound of the wind and the engine. No images. As if it only existed while you were there. I never stopped for any unidentified truck again. I learned that not everything that appears on the road is living people. And, as strange as it may seem, I am grateful for that meeting. Because Hank, or whatever that was, saved me. And maybe save others. Maybe that's what keeps him there. A debt to the road. A mission that he continues to fulfill, even after the end. And that's why I decided to write here. To say that, if one day, in the middle of the night, you are stopped by a man with a calm smile in a red Peterbilt. Listen. He knows what he's saying. After this episode, I started paying attention to other similar stories. I realized that there are many more truck drivers who have been through this than we imagine, but most prefer not to talk about it. For fear of appearing crazy, for fear of reliving. A guy told me he saw Hank's truck twice, on different nights, and after that he quit his job. He said that man's look was good, but also heavy. As if he carried the pain of having died there, alone, and now he had to watch the road to prevent others from suffering the same fate. It's a type of loneliness that not everyone can bear to face. There's something strange about that curve too. It is not technically difficult, it has no structural flaws. But accidents there are constant. Experienced people, with years on the road, end up leaving it as if they had been pulled. There are truck drivers who refuse to go there at night. And I understand. It's not just the road. That's what hangs over her. As if there was a layer between the real and the impossible in that section, and sometimes it breaks. And when that happens, Hank appears. Not as a threat, but as a warning, a ghost with a mission, not revenge. Today, every time I pass by, I leave the radio on very low and, as a habit, I say out loud, "Thanks, Hank." It may sound stupid, but it's my way of saying thank you. And also, perhaps, to protect myself. If he's still there, still listening, I want him to know that I understand. Which I respected. That I'm alive because of him. Sometimes, in the early hours of the morning, when the radio signal starts to fail or strange static comes into the air, I stop and listen. Because it could be him. Because there are things that the road holds only for those who truly live on it. And I believe, today more than ever, that not all the headlights you see in the dark belong to the living. So, if you ever see a truck driver alone on the side of the road, and he knows more about the road than he should, look twice. Because if he warns you about turn 5, the strange wind, the fog that comes without a cloud, listen. Just listen. Because maybe he's not here anymore. But he's trying to keep you. I think every truck driver who spends too much time on the road ends up hearing stories about routes that should be avoided. Some speak from superstition, others from experience. And until that day, I thought all of this was an exaggeration. But I learned the hard way that there are places that aren't just dangerous, they're actually cursed. This happened on an interstate route trip through Georgia, in 2016. It was early fall, and I had been driving for almost 9 hours straight, when I decided to stop at a gas station far away from the city. The kind of place that doesn't appear on the GPS, with no name on the sign, just dim lights and an old fuel pump. The place seemed to have stopped in time. There was a single gas station attendant, an older guy, with the look of someone who has seen a lot. He greeted me with a curt wave and, after filling up, started a conversation. Common thing. But in the end, out of nowhere, he asked me where I was going. When I said I intended to cut through a country road called Old Carver Road, his face fell. It got serious in a strange way. He said, "Don't go there at night. Turn around if you have to. That road isn't for the dark." I laughed a little, thinking it was a country story, and he just repeated, "I'm warning you. If you go in there after 10, it won't turn out the same." I ignored it. Of course I ignored it. It was the fastest way, and I was already late with the delivery. I got back in the truck, started it and continued my journey. It didn't take long to get on that road. It was narrower than I remembered and poorly lit. But until then, everything seemed normal. But after 10, and I remember exactly the time because I looked at the dashboard, the radio started to hiss. The temperature suddenly dropped. I'm talking about a sudden drop, of 20 degrees in a few minutes. And then the fog started. But it was no ordinary fog. It was thick, heavy, it seemed alive. It forced me to reduce it to 30 per hour. And even then, you could barely see a foot in front. That's when things started to get really wrong. First, the dashboard lights started to wobble. Then I noticed that the streetlights that were there before were simply gone. As if they had never been there. And worse, the GPS started spinning in circles, as if I were driving on an endless road. I looked in the rearview mirror and only saw darkness. Not even the beam from the rear lights appeared. It was as if the road had swallowed me. At this point, the cold inside the cabin was so intense that my breath formed steam, even with the heater on. And that was when I saw the figures for the first time. They were shadows. Tall, thin, walking slowly along the sides of the road. No defined shape, just black silhouettes, as if they were made of darkness itself. But what scared me most was that they didn't walk like people. It was as if they were sliding without touching the ground. The first one I saw was standing near a gnarled tree, facing the truck. And even without a face, I felt like he was looking at me. My instinct screamed to speed up, but the road seemed to have no end. I drove, but the route didn't change. Same landscape, same curve, same tree. It was like a loop. I started to break out in a cold sweat. I tried calling my supervisor, but the cell phone only showed no service. Even at a standstill, the speed needle fluctuated. I looked in the rearview mirror again and, this time, one of the shadows was closer. Much more. As if it was stuck to the back. I swear to all that is holy that I heard light knocks on the bodywork. Like nails scratching metal. I turned on the high beams and accelerated as much as I could. I don't know how long I ran. All I know is that, suddenly, the fog disappeared. The radio came back with static, and the road finally gave way to a lighted intersection. Like I was spit back out. I pulled over at a 24-hour gas station, shaking, with my face wet with sweat and my hands shaking. I went in, ordered a coffee and stood there looking at nothing. When I spoke to the attendant and told him where I had come from, he opened his eyes wide and just said, "Did you go through Old Carver?" "No." I shook my head and he was silent. He didn't ask anything else. He just gave me the coffee for free and told me not to mention it to anyone there. I returned to the truck with the feeling that something was still watching me. I looked in the mirrors from all angles. Nothing. But the feeling stayed. And it didn't go away for days. When I finally delivered the cargo, the shipping guy commented that I was late. He said he was waiting for me the night before. I thought it was a communication error, but when I went to look at my tracker, I saw that it had been showing a steady signal for almost 8 hours in the middle of Old Carver Road. As if I had stopped. But I swear I've been driving the whole time. Or at least he thought he was. And the worst? The truck had handprints on the back. 4, side by side. Long too thin to be human. After that, I started avoiding any road that wasn't known, signposted and with constant traffic. I did it out of fear, of course. But also out of respect. Because there are places that are not just dangerous, they are wrong. Places that seem to exist outside of time, where logic and reality fail. And Old Carver Road is one of them. I already went back to the region, just to check if it was all in my head. But I never found the entrance to that road again. As if she was only there that night, for me. As if you chose me. I've heard of other similar routes in other states. And the reports are too similar to be just a coincidence. I told this story to a few colleagues on the road, and most of them don't take it seriously. They think it was a fatigue-induced dream or some kind of hallucination. But those who have seen something similar just shake their heads in silence. One of them said he was also warned by a gas station attendant not to follow the road, years ago. And he didn't listen. He said that to this day he has nightmares about things that the dark brought. Those words stuck in my head. Because they describe exactly what I felt that night. The dark brought something. And that thing is still around. For some time, I thought about reporting the station where the gas station attendant warned me. I thought he should have done more, that he should have stopped it. But now, I understand. He knew that preventing it would do no good. That certain decisions we only learn by making by force. And that, perhaps, what haunts old Carver only appears when you defy the warning. As if it were part of the test. From punishment. Or something older than the asphalt itself. Something that lives between stop time and pure fear. And just waiting for the next stubborn soul to cross its territory. Today, every time someone asks me if it's worth taking a shortcut along a less busy road at night, I only say one thing: if someone warns you not to follow it, listen. Even if it seems silly. Even if it seems like history. Because, if you ignore it, it may come back, but it won't come back the same. I've always been a calm guy on the road. I like the solitude, the constant noise of the engine, the peace of being away from everything. But there was a trip that turned my head inside out. To this day I avoid talking about it, because I still feel a bit watched, even now. It was in 2018, on a long route from Chicago to Amarillo. I hit the road late in the afternoon. Everything was normal. Truck serviced, tank full, playlist ready. I planned to drive straight until the middle of the morning before stopping at a gas station. But that night, something entered the cabin with me. And I swear on everything, it wasn't human. Around 2 in the morning, already in a deserted part of Kansas, I began to feel the change. First, air pressure. The kind of feeling we feel when it's going to rain heavily, but without a single cloud in the sky. Then, a strange smell. Like too much stored clothing, mixed with something sweet, cloying. I thought it was all in my head, maybe tired. But then the passenger side mirror moved on its own. Slowly. As if someone was adjusting it to see better. I stood frozen, with my hand on the steering wheel, trying to rationalize. But then the handle on the passenger seat started to wobble. Alone. I looked at the seat next to me and felt an ice rise up my spine. He was sunk. As if someone was sitting there. But I was alone. Absolutely alone. I slowed down and looked better. The seat belt was taut, tensioned, as if fastened to the chest of someone invisible. And then came the first whisper. Low, hoarse, almost like a wind. I didn't understand what he was saying, but it was coming from the passenger seat. I turned the radio on full volume to drown it out. But even with the music loud, I still heard it. As if the voice was inside my head. I turned off the radio. I opened the windows. I spoke out loud to myself, asking what was going on. The truck responded with a sharp click on the dashboard. A sound that sounded like a light punch, coming from inside the structure. Then the glove compartment opened by itself. No knock, no jerk. It just opened. And that was enough for me to pull over to the side of the road, take a deep breath and try to understand if I was awake or dreaming. But everything around me said it was real. The truck is running, the GPS is working, the sound of the engine. And that presence, still there. I couldn't get out of the cabin. I wanted to, but something told me that if I opened the door, it would get worse. As if that someone was waiting for this. So I sat there, motionless, with my eyes fixed on the passenger seat, which was still sinking as if it had weight. The smell became stronger. Sweet, musty, suffocating. And then, out of nowhere, the voice spoke again. Clearer this time. And what I heard was, "You left me." That paralyzed me. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't recognize the voice. It was like hearing an echo of someone who never existed, or who shouldn't exist anymore. I started trying to remember anything that made sense. Someone I had left behind? Any accidents I saw? Nothing came. Just that weight next to me, that phantom breath and an anguish growing in my chest. I picked up my cell phone to try to film, to record, but the screen was frozen. White light. Nothing worked. I knocked on the device, turned it off and on, and only then did I realize that the battery had run out, even though it was almost full. It was at that moment that I felt the hand. Not really touching, but close. Like there was an open palm inches from the back of my neck, hovering there, charged with anger. I turned the key and started with everything. I returned to the road with my eyes burning, but without the courage to look to the side. Every time I tried to look in the passenger seat, the interior mirror shook. I even saw the reflection of the belt strap rising by itself, very slowly, as if someone was taking it off. But when he turned his head, everything seemed normal. I just felt it. It was still there. And then, for about 15 minutes, the truck seemed guided. The perfect curves, the exact control of speed, even with my hands shaking. As if another force was helping. Or assuming. Finally I stopped at a well-lit station, almost at dawn. I ran down from the cabin, without looking back. I entered the convenience store as if I was running away from something. I ordered a coffee and stood there, in silence. The attendant looked at me strangely. He asked if I was okay. I said yes, just tired. But then he looked behind me and said, "You're alone, right?" I just shook my head. He gave a nervous little smile and said, "It's just, sometimes there are people who swear they saw someone in the passenger seat. But when we go to look, there's no one there." After that day, I started driving with a small mirror stuck to the roof of the cabin, facing the passenger seat. It was my way of staying in control, of keeping watch without turning away. And sometimes I saw movement. A slight sinking in the upholstery, the belt moving on its own, or just a shadow crossing quickly, as if something was bothered by my gaze. I never managed to record anything. No electronic device worked properly during these demonstrations. And the strangest thing, this only happened when I drove long distances without stopping. It was as if time on the road opened up a space for this thing to return. I started researching, looking for some explanation. I read reports from other truck drivers who felt presences in the cabin, heard voices, lost time or went through sections without remembering the route. Everything very similar. One of them even told me that he also heard the phrase, "You left me." And he had a bad accident years ago, where his passenger died. But I've never suffered anything like this. I never lost anyone inside the truck. So, who is this passenger? Why me? Sometimes I think it could be someone I passed on the road, someone who died nearby. Or worse, someone who just needs a body to continue. Nowadays, I take shorter routes. I never run straight for more than 8 hours. It doesn't matter how much they pay me. I learn to respect the solitude of the road. Because there are moments when it is no longer just loneliness. It's presence. It's forced sharing of space with something that didn't ask for a ride, but got in anyway. And the worst thing is that, over time, the presence begins to adapt. You begin to know your schedules, your silences, your fears. And when you least expect it, she starts whispering things that only you understand. Things no one else should know. So, if you're on the road right now, reading this from somewhere, take a look at the seat next to you. But slowly. And if the seat is sagging, or if the belt seems to be stretched for no reason, don't say anything. Just take a deep breath and move on. Because sometimes, the person sitting next to you doesn't want to scare you. He just wants company. And sometimes, you want your place. There are certain things that we only realize when it is too late. And this delivery was the last one I accepted before dropping everything. It was supposed to be just another freight, a light load, nothing out of the ordinary. But it ended up becoming an endless nightmare. The ad appeared in a closed group of drivers, offering good money for an urgent delivery in a town called Elbridge, somewhere between Colorado and Nebraska. I had never heard of this city, and when I looked on the map, I found nothing. Not on Google, not on GPS. But the client swore it was real, and the advance payment convinced me. I picked up the load at an industrial warehouse near Denver. It was a medium-sized box, locked and sealed with black tape, without identification. The man who handed it to me just said, "Don't open it. Don't stop. Go straight to Elbridge. They'll find you." The way he said it bothered me, but it was too late to take it back. The road was empty, the sky was clear, nothing to indicate a problem. But about 3 hours later, I noticed that my surroundings started to feel strange. The landscape stopped changing. The trees were always the same, the asphalt looked freshly laid without a crack, and the streetlights were perfectly spaced, as if someone had copied and pasted the same stretch of road. I looked at the GPS and it showed an infinite straight line, with no name, no intersection, no city around it. I tried to go back, but when I turned around, I ended up arriving at the same stretch. The same posts. The same trees. The same mark on the asphalt. The first time I realized something was wrong was when I looked at the truck's dashboard and noticed that the hour hand hadn't changed. It still read 2:47, even after almost an hour of driving. I tried restarting the panel, but everything stuck. The radio, the watch, the tracker, everything frozen in time. And then I started to see what looked like headlights behind me. Distant, but constant. As if another truck was following me. But he never got closer. Every time I tried to stop, the headlights went out. When it turned again, they appeared again. At that time, my body was already tense, my chest was tight. I felt that this was no ordinary trip. It was as if I had fallen off the map of the real world. As if I had crossed a point of no return. And the only thing left now was to move forward, as far as possible. After a while, I don't know how long, because the clocks were still locked, I saw the sign, "Welcome to Elbridge." An old wooden sign, half crooked, with letters almost erased. Behind her, a small town that looked like something out of a 1950s catalog. Small houses, all with the same peeling beige paint, streetlights that creaked in the wind, not a single soul. I entered slowly, trying to find some sign of where to leave the cargo. It was then that I noticed, there was no one. No cars, no open windows, no lights on. It was as if the city was on hold. I drove through the empty streets until, without really understanding how, I parked in front of a warehouse similar to the one at the exit. Same shape, same colors, even the same rusty metal plate on the door. I felt the air become heavy. I got out of the truck and, when I went around to check the load, the back was already open. The box was no longer there. And then, my blood ran cold. On the driver's seat was a new delivery note. Same letter. Same signature. Same destination, Elbridge. And the scheduled time? 2:47 a.m. The same one that was still marked on the dashboard. I returned to the road in shock, not knowing what to think. And that's when it all started again. The same path. The same landscape. The same sequence of posts and trees. And, on the horizon, the same headlights behind me, keeping the exact distance. I tried to get off the road, but there was no way out. No forks, no dirt roads, nothing. As if that passage was the only thing that existed in the world. At each turn, the city remained the same. The box reappeared. The note too. And I rolled. Non-stop. Unable to change course. I lost count of how many times I made this delivery. Sometimes I thought it had been weeks. Sometimes it seemed like it all happened on the same day. I started to forget my name, my family, my original route. The only thing left was the truck, the road, and Elbridge. Until, on one of the laps, I saw something different, a broken rearview mirror lying on the road. Identical to mine. I pulled over and saw, for the first time, another truck exactly like mine, abandoned on the side of the road. Covered in dust. Without anyone. And on the passenger seat, a note identical to mine. This vision destroyed me inside. It was as if I had crossed paths with myself at some point in time. Or with someone who went through the same thing before me. I tried to open the other truck, but the doors were locked. The worn tires, the faded paint, as if it had been there for years. And even so, the clock on the dashboard also showed 2:47. I got back to my truck shaking, feeling like the road had become a maze with no way out. That I was no longer anywhere that really exists. And the scariest thing was, a part of me was starting to accept this. As if my mind was molding itself to the loop. From there, I started to notice subtle variations. Sometimes the city had an extra house. Sometimes the box in the compartment came with a muffled sound from inside. A light knock. As if something inside was trapped too. Also repeating. Also waiting. And time ceased to exist for me. Didn't sleep. I didn't eat. Just drove. As if that cycle fed on that. Of resistance. From wear and tear. As if the delivery wasn't about the box, but about me. About how much I could take. About what would be left of me in the end. And then, on one of those turns, I saw someone. A man standing on the side of the road, waving. The face looked familiar. It was like looking into an old, distorted mirror. When I stopped, he just said, "If you want to leave, you have to leave the truck." But how do you leave the only place that still feels real? I pretended I didn't hear. I went back to the cabin and continued my journey. But his voice remained. And now, every time I go around Elbridge, I feel like he's closer. Waiting for the time when I will break the cycle. Or merge with it. Become part of the city. Part of the load. Part of the road. If you're reading this, maybe you found my story by accident. Maybe you accepted the same type of shipping. Or maybe you're looking for Elbridge right now on your map. If that's the case, stop. Don't accept it. Don't follow the unnamed route. Because there are roads that lead nowhere. And there are shipping costs that never end. And I'm still here. Rotating. Always at 2:47 a.m. Carrying something no one should carry.